On this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast, the in-arena host for the Phoenix Suns, Jessica Slate, joins the show as we talk about NBA draft prospects, the style of play in the NBA, and the San Francisco 49ers. Sports fans, don't miss the Wait a Minute show with Jelani J.B. Bodie on Spreaker.com at 8 p.m. coming to you on Saturdays. And without further ado, cue the intro. What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta. With me today is the in-arena host of the Phoenix Suns, Jessica Slate. What is up, Jessica?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. Pleasure is all mine. Now, it's pretty cool because for some reason, you never really kind of think of like the in-arena host as being like heavy sports people, but then like when you kind of think about it, it's like, why the hell wouldn't they be? They're there all the time. Like
yeah, so, I think it kind of all the different hosts approach it differently, and we obviously all have the same interest in trying to enhance the in-game experience, but I think we all have different goals and different reasons why we got into it. And I've always just liked it because of the environment it puts me in, but it also allows me to sharpen my public speaking and kind of be in that environment as well.
That's great. So before we get into nuts and bolts of anything, any social media plugs that you want to give so people can find you?
Yeah, if any social media, Instagram, Twitter, it's all at the J Slate. Pretty simple, pretty easy to find. Probably the heaviestly active on Instagram or Twitter, so they can find me on both of those.
So you can't even lie right now. One of the main reasons you definitely want to get into those arenas is to hang out with some of the pretty freaking cool basketball players that you probably get to walk by. Like, you're probably not starstruck at this point, but if I saw half the athletes you saw up close and personal, I probably would be starstruck.
It's very exciting. I stand in the visitors tunnel while I wait for my hits, so I get pretty good access to all those players. We don't really interact, of course. They're there to play a game. I'm there to, say my lines and get through the promotion. So we're all kind of all business while we're on the court, but definitely great to be in the proximity of such phenomenal athletes, accidentally bump into LeBron James or see Giannis Antetokounmpo and stuff. So it's really cool to at least be in that environment and see them up close and personal.
So let's just be straight. Hopefully you bumped into LeBron, because I feel like if LeBron bumped into like any normal sized person, they would go flying.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was so focused on getting onto the court and where I needed to be in my specific position, and he was the last one off the court talking to the refs, so kind of bumped into him, but complete gentleman, just kind of grabbed my shoulders, moved to the side, kept moving. Not, an entire scene at all, but definitely kind of that caught me off guard because you're like, oh, okay, that's LeBron. That's not just a normal person you're bumping into.
He seems like a nice guy, but it would have been pretty cool to make SportsCenter as like, the host that got knocked down by LeBron.
It's not the worst headline, that's for sure.
No, there's definitely worse. So we're going to jump right into things. You're obviously heavy basketball. That's your world. That's where you are. You told me that you like college ball. I'm not massive on college ball, but I do know enough that we can talk about it. And, of course, the big thing coming up after the postseason, which is happening right now, when the NBA postseason wraps up, automatically moves to draft.
Of course.
And the biggest thing right now, all year we've been hearing about, is Zion Williamson of Duke. And rightfully so, he is an absolute monster. First off, what do you see from Zion that makes you think that he's going to be a great player or not a great player in the NBA?
I think he's one of the most complete athletes. He's phenomenal at defense. He's untouchable on offense. He drives in the paint. He does have a perimeter game, so he's able to shoot those threes. And then he's somebody that's resilient on the court. He plays the entire game. He's a good teammate. And then he just has that NBA size. So they're not going to have to do a lot to build his frame, to get him conditioned for the NBA games. Of course, there's a lot more of the season. They do have to get used to the length of the season, the travel, kind of the lifestyle of the NBA. But aside from that, the fundamentals, his game, his size, he's definitely the most NBA ready and will have the easiest transition, I think, at this point.
Yeah, without a doubt. He is an absolute monster. Now, do you have any NBA comparisons? I know people love doing NBA comparisons. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I feel like for a player like Zion, you kind of have to kind of put him somewhere because he's so different that you kind of want to gauge his skills? Do you have any current or former NBA players that you would compare him to?
He often gets compared to LeBron. I think that's a hard comparison just because LeBron is so deep in his career, and typically it's a little bit easier to compare them to someone younger. I think he gets looked at a lot as far as being NBA ready, like DeAndre Ayton, although they have totally different styles of play and come from different backgrounds on different teams. And so I think it is really hard to compare him because he really is one of those once-in-a-lifetime players, and I think that is what makes him so similar to LeBron, is that you can't compare him very much because he's so impactful in his own way, in his own style. And so just that similarity alone of being uncomparable makes him comparable to LeBron, if that makes sense. But definitely he's for sure a once-in-a-lifetime type of player. I don't think there's anyone that really has a similar game or mentality on the court that he does.
See, I don't know how old you are. I'm not super old, but I'm old enough to remember watching like rundowns of like former players. And I grew up at the tail end of Shawn Kemp being a player. And that's exactly who I see in Zion Williamson. He has a better perimeter game, but just the way he flies to the rim, his footwork is good. He's a defensive juggernaut, and he's an absolute monster. I just see Shawn Kemp. Everything about him to me screams Shawn Kemp. And that is a great comparison. That's a Hall of Famer, one of the best players of all time. So that's who I see. You kind of, that's who I would compare him to. I think he's more Shawn Kemp than LeBron.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great comparison. And if you're going to have a career that matches up to Shawn Kemp's, it's nothing to knock. So that would definitely be a good path for Zion to follow. But like I said, I'm going to be interested to see how he plays once he gets there. It's different competition. He's going to be going against big guys, faster guys, people with better shooting, higher IQs. So it'll be interesting to see how his game kind of wavers in the beginning of the season. Nobody usually has a completely flawless transition in the NBA. Even the big guys like LeBron and Kobe and Michael had some stutters at the very beginning of their careers. But I think once he gets past that, he's just going to be one of the most dominant players that the league has seen.
So the next guy that was talked about, and he really rose up, not out of nowhere because he was known last year, but he took major steps this year. He brought a small school into the big dance, Murray State, Ja Morant. He flew onto the scene. As we're watching Zion Williamson dunk on everything, here's this little guard that is basically emulating the same exact stuff and dunking on everybody as well. And he's a complete player. He's a complete guard. Really willed Murray State into the tournament, got them past the first round. Didn't have enough help in the second round, but he is a phenomenal player. And I feel like he is definitely going to go second to Zion's first. But my whole question is, with the current NBA, I see more value in Ja Morant, where we're a guard-driven league right now, and a guy that plays like him, and his comparison is Russell Westbrook, and I see that being pretty damn close in their playing styles. Who would you pick if you are a GM right now, sitting there looking at Zion, looking at Ja? In terms of their style, which one do you think fits the NBA more currently?
I think a big part of it is the team and how he fits into the chemistry of the team and the role of the team. Some teams, of course, the perimeter game and smaller players are becoming a lot more popular in the current style of play in the NBA. But I do think, there's obviously a place for Zion in the league. I personally am a huge fan of Ja Morant. And so I think he's going to be really successful when he gets into the league. I do see the comparison to Russell Westbrook. And so he has a lot of that grit and that aggression that Westbrook brings to the game. And he's just unmatched. But I also see a lot of Damian Lillard in him, which has kind of that similar grit and focus and ability to really move the ball and put up points and help his team be successful. And so I think Ja Morant, his defense isn't as powerful as Zion Williamson. Part of that, of course, is just, presence on the court. But I do think he's going to have no problem transitioning as well. And I really love the small school players, despite going to a big school myself, because I like the grit they bring. They kind of have that chip on their shoulder, and they're looking to prove themselves. And I think that motivation alone helps elevate them once they get to the league.
Well, yeah, Steph Curry is a small school player. People forget he came from Davidson, and Davidson was a nothing school, and his three-point shooting ability brought them into the big dance. But you mentioned Damian Lillard, and I love Dame Lillard. I think he's a beast. He's showing it again in the playoffs right now, why he's so talented. And it mind boggles me that every single year, it seems at the middle of the year, he has to come out and make a verbal statement that he's one of the best point guards in the league. And I just think that's absolutely bonkers that we don't put him in the top 5 minimum point guards in the league every year by default. I don't understand that.
No, it blows my mind. He's definitely one of the most underrated players in the league in general. And the fact that even people consider Westbrook to be underrated, which just blows my mind that that would even be a
Triple
discussion.
double machine.
Exactly. But, there's always haters in sports. And I think that's a lot what fuels conversation and discussions in sports media. But Dame Lillard has always been one of those players that I really am impressed by. Dame, Kyrie, of course, pretty much the entire Golden State roster, Westbrook, all of those guys just bring that pure love of basketball and passion to the court where they are so focused that that basketball is all they're thinking about on that court. And I think that's a really unique thing because there aren't distractions and you aren't worried about whatever is being said affecting their game or affecting their role on the team. They are there to be a basketball player and they do a great job at it.
I really appreciate your small school love, by the way, because I graduated from Marist College, and that is the epitome of a small school. And while we don't have many NBA players, we have one who is a NBA great Hall of Famer, Rick Smits. And
Right.
that is all that we need as a school. Our women's basketball team dominates in terms of the notoriety, but
Of course.
all we need is Rick Smits. He was a beast. And so I appreciate the small school love because the small schools need it as much as we can get it.
Of course. Well, I went to Texas, so we've got Kevin Durant and LaMarcus Aldridge and a handful of other guys.
Can you please mention Jared Allen? Come on, I'm a Nets fan.
Jared Allen is doing
that's my
phenomenal
man.
in the playoffs so far.
Joel Embiid should have been ejected from that game for that elbow.
You can't do things in retrospect, but he half-heartedly apologized, so we'll give it to him.
I mean, they got the last laugh last night, because the Nets did not show up in the third quarter again.
It was a bit rough, but definitely a fun playoff run so far for all these different teams. Golden State and the Clippers going back and forth, Brooklyn and Philly battling. So it's been a lot of fun to watch so far.
It has, and the Spurs basically coming out from the ashes and doing what the Spurs do and just being the most fundamentally sound team on the planet.
Well, how can you not be with Pop as your coach?
This is such a monster. He really is the Belichick of the NBA, and I think that's a beautiful comparison.
Easily.
So we're going to compare two other guys, keeping with the college game now. Two guys that I have criticized, and I'm going to continue to criticize. And while it might be fair, might not be fair because they're kids, RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish, both of the other freshman phenoms from Duke, both declared. I think it's a massive mistake from both. RJ Barrett's highly considered to be one of the top guards. I think Ja Morant's the best guard, but RJ Barrett is arguably the best guard. Cam Reddish is a talented player. But just from my perspective, one of the reasons why I think it's a mistake is when Zion was out on injury, Duke was awful. They weren't the team that they were supposed to be. And when you have guys like RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish, who are supposed to be two of the other better players in the country, you have no business losing games. So I feel that the way they played when Zion was out is a super detriment to them as players. Do you think that they're making a mistake coming out in draft, or should they be seasoned one more year? How would you feel about that?
I think it's a bit heavy to assume that, they can fill in for Zion with him being such a huge part of their team. And I think we forget that all of these kids getting drafted aren't going to be the next Giannis. There needs to be role players in the NBA. They're not all going to be, all-stars right off the bat. And so I think that's going to be kind of where they find their flow in the NBA, is being those role players, people that are helping contribute and distribute the ball and make the ball move on the court, but not necessarily come out and be, these household names with groundbreaking stats. And they might not even be rookie of the year, but I think they do have a place in the NBA. I don't think it's premature for them to announce their drafting. They're both projected top 15 overall. RJ right there behind Ja Morant at number 3. And he's honestly likely the best shooting guard of the entire draft class. He has some competition there from Kobe White out of UNC, even Jarrett Culver, the Big 12 Player of the Year from Tech. So he does have some people like right there nipping at his coattails. But I don't think it's premature for them to announce for the draft. And I think they're going to find a role in the NBA. I just don't think it's going to be as, they're not going to lead a team to a victory. I think they're going to find their place behind some already established veterans in the NBA and kind of contribute that way.
So basically like a Bradley Beal, CJ McCollum type, where they are good, very talented players, but they are not the focal guys of the team.
Yeah, because, a team is made up of 5 players, 6 men, the whole bench. You can't just have all-stars on every team. Even Golden State has, players contributing that aren't necessarily the Steph Currys and Kevin Durant's. You need a full roster of players, and I think that's where they're going to find their role.
Oh yeah, Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green are the two most important players on Golden State, and they have been for years. And so you are completely right with that. Now I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. I don't know if you have this right now, but if you do, we're going to hold you to it. Do you have a dark horse in the coming out in the NCAA NBA draft? A dark horse to watch for that might not be a top pick, but will be an impact player in the NBA.
I mean,
Told you,
I
I'm
don't
putting you on the
know.
spot. You can get
No,
mad.
I
That's
mean,
okay.
I'm biased. So, I'd love to see Jackson Hayes go as high as possible. But he's already projected top 10. So I wouldn't really consider that a dark horse.
Well, I mean, anyone out of the top three in the NBA draft, to be realistic, is basically a dark horse. I think that no one expects much from people outside like the top three. Like, it's pretty
Well,
weird.
and
The
for
NBA
me,
draft is weird.
I'm more concerned for Jackson Hayes having that injury at the end of the season.
Yep.
And so, I think he'll for sure find a place in the NBA. He's projected pretty high right now, a lot higher than I would think based on how Texas did, although they did win NIT, but to not be in March Madness, I think kind of, I don't know, to me hurt his draft stock, but I definitely would like to see him go high. I think he did a great job as contributing to Texas, and I watched him play against UNC, and he was right there with Snoop on Texas, and they did a great job working together. It was just the team didn't have the consistency, but I don't think that reflects on his contributions to the team.
So Brooklyn loves Texas players, and Brooklyn has a first-round pick for the first time ever. So hopefully they sneak up and grab him because he would be a great addition to the team.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it would be awesome. So we're going to jump into NBA. Another one of your fortes. You are a basketball lady.
Yes.
And we might get into a debate on this because I don't know where you sit on this, but the style of play has completely changed from early 2000s, late 90s to now. It is arguably better, arguably worse. It really depends on what side of the fence you sit on. We are currently sitting in the time of three-pointers, drive and kick, shoot a lot of threes. Analytics tell you that three-point shooting has more value than making a lot of twos. Where me growing up, I saw a lot of the Patrick Ewing and a lot of the big man back to the basket and the mid-range Michael Jordan style mid-range game. Where do you sit on the cusp of what game is basically a better way of playing?
I prefer to watch a much more physical game.
Yes.
Detroit Pistons, bad boys, but I think that the three is where it's at right now. Perimeter shooting, anywhere from beyond the arc. Even, if you want to include mid-range in there and clump it, because these guys are taking, basically 4-point shots, these deep threes. So the mid-range is just short of a three-pointer anyway. But it's not just being able to shoot threes now. It's being able to shoot threes in transition. It's shooting threes on the catch and shoot. So they're very mobile threes. They're moving around a lot because defense is focusing so much on shutting down the traffic in the paint. So, that mid-range and three-point shot, both crucial because you just can't drive the same way you could to the basket before. And I think as much of it is a part of the game, it's just not as efficient as three-point shooting anymore. It also, helps the longevity of careers. You're not getting as many injuries with less contact out by the three-point line. And I think that's why, the Stephs, the Tobias Harrises, the KDs, JJ Redick, Kyrie, all those guys are doing such a great job and being so successful because they've done such a great job at shooting from beyond the arc.
Without a doubt. Now, I'm with you. I love the more physical style, and the mid-range, as much as people claim that it's dead, there's still a lot of players that live in the mid-range. There's still Kawhi Leonard, who is one of the top three players in the game, is a mid-range beast. D'Angelo Russell on my Nets loves the elbow jumper and the free throw jumper. I can go down the line. LeBron is a mid-game monster, and he's the best player in the game still. So you have people that are still keeping the mid-game, but the three-point is reigning supreme. How have the rules, because I don't think it's any argument that the game has gotten softer, where someone like Steph Curry is not getting free rides to the rim as often as he does if he's playing in the 90s. He is getting Larry Johnson of the Knicks clubbing him in the head every single time he tries to come in. How has that kind of played into the role of guys like Steph, who I love Steph. I like Golden State. Golden State's been my second favorite team since the Jason Richardson era. So I go back with them when they had the ugliest uniforms of all time. So for me, just watching it right now, I look at it and I say, I love Steph. Steph is great. His three-point shooting is revolutionary. but he's kind of, if he's in that generation, I see him being his dad. I see him being Del Curry, a lethal three-point shooter, but he would not be able to get to the lane the way he does. Am I off base, on base? Where do you feel in terms of the way these little guys can get to the rim so easily now?
I don't think it's necessarily that, he can't do those things or that he's too soft to. I think it's just such an IQ game before, and before it was so physical, and, based on what your body could accomplish. And I think now it's, almost which team can outplay the other team based on their IQ and seeing the plays and setting up an offense. So I just think the game has developed. I think there's so much talent at this point that you can't just rely on physicality, because just every player would be every himself. So it's really on who can see the plays and who can find those holes in the offense to make those shots. And I think that's why the three has been so successful, because that doesn't require as much physicality, but it does require outsmarting the defense.
Now, where do you sit on superstar calls? Because I hate them. And I know they've always been around. Superstars have always gotten touch calls. It's happened. But I feel like right now it happens so often. And it affects the game in so many ways, where I love James Harden. He's one of the best scorers I've ever seen in my life. But he relies on touch calls. He relies on them a lot to get him to the line. And it maddens me that touch calls are such a big part of the game, and guys look for calls. Vlade Divac was known as the biggest floppers of all time. And you have guys now selling calls, and it's a part of the game. There's no criticism there. You're not allowed to flop anymore, but you can still throw your head back and do those ridiculous things where if you're watching just in real time, you're like, that's not a foul. How did they call that a foul? How do you, without criticizing too much, feel about how the touch foul has become such a big part of the game?
I think at this point, it's just one more strategy that, players take advantage of. It's been hugely successful in soccer. That's kind of what FIFA is known for. And so
the United States has not caught up with that yet. We're the only team that gets knocked down and gets back up instead of rolling around for a half an hour.
And we don't win. So we should probably look into it. But I do think, it's just one more strategy. And like I said, the game is so competitive. If you think you're going to get a call, why would you not try and get it? I mean, that sounds more soft to me than not driving to the paint, but you're trying to win a game. So if you can do something to potentially win a game, why would you not do it?
Yeah, I agree. The competitor in me would sit there and want to take every single competitive advantage as I can to get that win. So I don't want to get you in trouble, but I do have to say I am pushing for the Suns to get the first pick and grab Zion, because I think it would be awesome for Devin Booker and Ayton to have someone like Zion there. I feel like that would propel the Suns to a new level. They wouldn't be in the cellar anymore, and you would be a lot happier while you're announcing your games.
To assume I'm not happy now. Our crowd is a lot of fun, win or lose. We've got some pretty strong fans that pull through, and we've had a lot of energy with some of our new players. Kelly Oubre, of course, brings a lot of swag to the game that's made it a lot of fun.
Yes, he does.
But I do think, just going off that, whether they get the number one draft pick or not, I think just like we talked about with Ja Morant, with Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, I'm like Jarrett Culver a lot. Any of those guys are going to be pretty solid contributors right off the bat. I don't think there's a wrong move. Zion, of course, is going to be really interesting to see how he contributes. We had the number one draft pick last year, and DeAndre Ayton's done a great job as well transitioning into the NBA. And so I think it'll be interesting no matter who they pick. And I think whichever of those players they pick is going to be someone that'll contribute right off the bat.
So I got a few things to run down. One, I'm still mad at DeAndre Ayton. I'm an Arizona fan in terms of NCAA. So I'm extremely mad at DeAndre Ayton for not getting out of the first round. And if you ever have a chance to talk to DeAndre, tell him some nobody from New York is mad at him. Number two, I also feel your fans are really happy because you live in Phoenix and you're in Arizona. And here in New York, where I am in Poughkeepsie, there's still a chance of snow every once in a while. So you guys have definitely a happier time there. And three, I really want you guys to get the first pick just so the Knicks don't. That's my other reasoning for why I would want anyone else to get the first pick.
Spike Lee might not be happy, but I'll take the first pick any day.
Spike Lee's not happy because the Knicks are bad. So, honestly, they had their one good run, and it was because of Jeremy Lin and not even Melo, who's their superstar. And they've been bad since. Don't get me wrong. I'm a Nets fan. I don't want the Knicks to be bad. I like when New York basketball's good. And I like Kevin Knox. I like Mitch Robinson. I like their makeup. They have some talented guys. they just, I don't know. They just need to get out of their own heads. I don't know what's wrong with the Knicks. They're just not a good team. But we're going to now jump into some football.
Perfect.
You're a 49ers fan, which is cool because I grew up loving Jerry Rice. I'm a Jets fan, but any kid that grew up loved Jerry Rice, loved Emmitt Smith, if you grew up watching football back in the 90s. So the Niners have had a special place in my heart. I actually knew all the teams in there, like Ricky Waters and all the stuff like that, and Garrison Hurst. So I did like the Niners. My cousin's a big Niners fan. So I'm actually excited. I think that the Niners are going to have a decent team this year. Big factor for me is, can Jimmy Garoppolo come back from his injury and bring you guys up to playoff contention where I think you guys belong?
Just going off the ACL recovery, Tom Brady tore his ACL. He bounced back. I don't think Garoppolo is Tom Brady, but I think he approaches the game in a similar way. He's had some of that same coaching coming from Belichick, and I think if Belichick saw something in him and had him as their number two, that something, in Jimmy Garoppolo will help them. I don't see them being, just a roll-in playoff team. I think they might shoot for that wild card position versus the Seahawks. They for sure have Russell, so they're going to be pretty serious heading into the season. But I have no fear that Jimmy will bounce back. He was injured in September, so he's had the perfect amount of time to recover. And then, the team has, for lack of better terms, kind of sucked the past 3 seasons. Not even just losing seasons, but really losing seasons. And so, they can really kind of only go up from there. They haven't had the most eventful offseason. Obviously, OBJ, AB, both those guys went on to other teams, but we have the number 2 pick and the number 36 pick. So they should be able to pull some pretty strong players out of the college level. Maybe Nick Bosa get some defensive ends in there to work on the pass rushing game, but it'll be interesting to see how they develop and how Jimmy Garoppolo is able to bounce back.
I hope Jimmy G has a good year. I was very high on him, and I think he can give you all the tools to make you guys a competitive team. When he came in at the end 2 seasons ago, he really put a jolt in that team. Now, fun fact about Jimmy G, me and one of my buddies early in the podcast we had a lack of communication because I wanted to do a best quarterbacks list, and I told him the best looking quarterbacks in terms of how they look, play style. He took it as the best looking quarterbacks. And just so you know, Jimmy G was rated number 1 in our best looking quarterbacks. So
I'll take it.
I think you can concur.
I'll take number 1 at anyone at this point.
So
no, but, I'm a big Jimmy G fan. I was really excited when we got him. I said it before. I believe that he has a lot of similar characteristics and playing style to Tom Brady. I think, Tom Brady's the LeBron, so he's hard to match. But I think once Jimmy G can get in his rhythm, not have to struggle with an injury, and maybe get some wide receivers. He has Marquise Goodwin, Kendrick Bourne, Pierre Garçon, but I think, maybe get some real heat in there. Some pretty untouchable players I think would be great just to see how Jimmy G works with, a pretty strong offense. But I am hopeful. I looked at the Rams. They looked real great and it was real appealing, and then bought another 49ers jersey and doubled down. So not much I can do at this point. I have trouble with bandwagoning. So I'm stuck with my 49ers, and I'm going to have to put all my eggs in the Jimmy G basket.
There you go. Well, I give you guys the graces to get to the Super Bowl as long as you lose to my Jets when you get there. Okay. That's the rule.
No promises.
But all right. With that high note, we're going to wrap this great podcast up. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Once again, that is Jessica Slate, the in-arena host for the Phoenix Suns. Again, do you want to give any social media plugs so people can come find you?
Yeah, it's at VJ Slate. They can find me on Instagram and on Twitter. They can always, hit me up if they want to talk about sports or whatever, see what I'm up to. Always posting different things, whether it's analysis or play-by-play, some of my hosting and stuff. So there's a lot going on that's fun to keep up with.
Yep, she's very personable. She talked to me, guys, so she's very personable. And again, I'm Alex Cuesta, the host of the Sports Opinions podcast. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @A_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30, Instagram SportsOpinions30. Visit the Facebook page, and anywhere you can hear a podcast, you can find this. Just go search for it, like it, subscribe it, give it a high rating. Once again, this was the Sports Opinions podcast. Jessica, thanks again for coming on. Everybody, have a good one.